dwarves, elves, drag queens, and Nazi leaders. All that and more in this week's episode of Drifters. Famous historical figures are being thrown into a blender in this week's episode, which was pretty unexpected, I have to admit. I honestly believed that Toyohisa was going to absolutely destroy those Orte Empire soldiers who were raping all of the elf women and children. Yet, it was actually Nobunaga who forced the elves to finish them off. It almost seems as if he's trying to look out for the well-being of Toyohisa, trying to build him up a little and turn him into the king of this fantasy world. What are his motives behind this? I'm still not quite sure. What I will say is, this week's episode is the beginning of another epic story arc in the Drifters series. Not to mention, we were introduced to some brand new Drifters in this episode, such as the Count of Saint Germain, who just so happens to be the right-hand man of Adolf Hitler, a Drifter who actually created the Orte Empire. That's right, Adolf Asshole Hitler is actually a character in this show. Pretty much they've proven they can do exactly what they want. It's weird enough that the leader of the Ends might as well be Jesus Christ. Now we have Hitler involved as well. And that's not all. There's also this other Navy Imperial officer from World War II. He goes by the name of Tamon Yamaguchi, and just like that World War II fighter pilot, he also got to bring some of his toys along. He actually has this giant naval battleship, which I just think is freaking awesome. He's actually battling against the Orte Empire with the help of these Griffin riders, who are actually screaming Tora, Tora, Tora as they're fighting against the Orte Empire. People who know their World War II history can see a lot of significance behind this. I have to say it's one hell of an accomplishment for them to take some historical elements and combine it with a fantasy setting and still manage to make it feel natural. Overall, though, the plot of this week's episode of Drifters was pretty simple. Essentially, Toyohisa and their group have taken down this Orte Empire stronghold, and they're getting the attention of the Empire, who realize, oh shit, the Drifters are actually coming back against us. They're starting this big rebellion, which eventually will spread like wildfire across the lands, causing other people to want to join the cause. And you can already see that coming to fruition in this episode, as a lot of other elf groups are coming to meet with them and join them in the battle. Not to mention, they're also going to be getting the help of some dwarves, who might be responsible for creating some guns for the Drifters, which, that's just pretty awesome in and of itself. Toyohisa and Yoichi continue to train the elves in the art of warfare, with Toyohisa just cutting down trees because it's badass, and Yoichi teaching them how to use a bow and arrow, which is very easy for the elves because they're descended from Legolas, apparently. And Nobunaga continues to do what he does best, which is turn people's corpses into shit. He seems to be completely obsessed with this battle tactic, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But one of the biggest characters introduced in this episode, and one who I think is certainly going to leave an impact from this one, is the Count of Saint Germain, who is this ancient European adventurer who was allied with Adolf Hitler and probably one of the biggest Whigs in the Orte Empire. So big, in fact, that he can pretty much do what he wants, and his entrance in this episode is flamboyant, to say the least, when he arrives with his two attendants. This dude just busts into this room and interrupts this meeting, and actually uses lipstick to draw all over this map to let them know how the Drifters are attacking them. That's when we're formally introduced to that World War II Navy Imperial officer. I'm not sure what to make of the Count character quite yet. He seems to have his very own ulterior motives, like a lot of other characters in this series. There are many different factions who are coming together, divided, not to mention we still have a number of Drifters who haven't even met each other quite yet, so I'm really interested to see where this is all going to be heading, and it really ends big, because in this week's episode it looks like the Ends are getting ready to attack the Drifters, so we might get our very first big confrontation between the Ends and Toyohisa. In particular, Joan of Arc is getting ready to bring her crazy ass into battle, and that is just building the hype immensely for the next episode. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Drifters? Last week's episode ended with some extreme shock value. This week's episode deviated a little bit from that with the use of comedy and the introduction of the Count of Saint Germain, who is just one of the most androgynous looking characters that I have ever seen. I actually kind of liked it, because last week's episode was frankly disturbing to the point that it was almost a little off-putting, and I honestly thought the episode was going to open up with Toyohisa just going into a berserker rage and just completely destroying all of these guys. But again, Toyohisa demonstrated that he actually has a cool head, despite the fact that he is an incredible incredibly powerful warrior who will just completely wreck your shit. He knows when to bring honor into a battle. And all of these guys decide that they're going to lay down their arms and they're not going to fight back. But Nobunaga comes in, knocks him out, and tells the elves, you gotta kill these guys. It's the only way to do that from this point on. They have done things that are too terrible to just lock them up in jail. And they just execute pretty much all of them, except for one guy who claims he didn't have anything to do with this situation. Nobunaga continues to be something of a fatherly figure for Toyohisa, always looking out for his best interests and trying to build him up to be the next big leader of this world. Of course, this is something that Toyohisa does not want. He has no plans to be a king. He's completely content with being a warrior and helping out the downtrodden, which is a really nice thing about his character, I have to say. In the beginning of the series, I thought he was really one-dimensional, and for the last couple of episodes, I've been seeing a completely different side of Toyohisa, which is honestly kind of refreshing in this world, which is filled to the brim with extreme violence. Overall, though, at the end of the day, this was essentially a setup episode for the next big arc of the series. I cannot wait to see what other ends are going to be involved with the battle with Toyohisa. Maybe there's going to be more than just Joan of Arc there. I believe she did mention Gilles de Rais is going to be there as well, and he was pretty freaking hardcore in his introduction. A very strong but silent type of character. I can't wait to see who's going to fight who, and hopefully we'll get some more revelations as what's going to be happening as we get closer to the end of this anime series. As far as I know, this season is supposed to only be about 12 episodes, so we're already at the halfway point. It's kind of ridiculous, to say the least. This series is moving really fast, but honestly, it's very engrossing. I can't wait to learn more about it. There are certainly more questions than answers, however. I mean, there's another scene with that character Easy, who's going to war with Murasaki. They're the ones who are actually bringing the drifters into this fantasy world. Why are they doing this? I still have no freaking clue. It is funny that they actually get play-by-play of all of the different events that are going on in the fantasy world, where the fact that she actually sees all of the things that are going on, like, on her computer, and of course she completely flips out. But this episode right here was pretty damn good. I didn't expect some of the events that were going to come along with it. There were certainly a lot of pleasant surprises. Lots of brand new Drifter characters have been introduced. The fact that we're going to have Adolf Hitler in the show, I think, is pretty crazy. They claimed that he committed suicide, but I have a feeling we're going to see the mustachioid fool eventually in the show. He's a really easy villain to hate. I mean, he's Hitler. How can you not hate this character? So he's really going to be the perfect villain for the show. And I'm just waiting for that eventual moment where maybe Toyohisa gets to meet Hitler and decapitates him. Wouldn't that be such a badass moment? And so, at the end of the day, this was another solid episode of Drifters, which if you've been following the series, I highly recommend checking this one out. There are some important story elements that you do not want to miss. There's a few cool action scenes, a little bit of comedy, and just a tad of shock value, which is exactly what the show has always been about. I really liked this one a lot. I'm excited to see where it's going, so I'm going to give this episode right here a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Drifters fans. You might see something you like. If any of you watch the episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. What do you hope to see from the coming episodes of Drifters? Who is Joan of Arc going to battle against, and what do you want to see from the rest of the Drifters anime series? Thank you guys so much for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave me a like, and make sure to leave me a comment or two as well. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much again for watching. I will see you next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby!